नहीं मैं डालती हूँ रोमांटिक का मुझे पसंद है मुझे अच्छा लगता है लेकिन वो होता है ना ज्यादा ये शोज और वो इनके भी स्टेटस मुझे बहुत अच्छे लगते हैं हाँ वो तुमने रखा था सोना में पड़ी
Good evening, welcome in RNQ Easy classes Transcendental notion,
किधर जाए हमारा
notions of being and transcendentals.
तेरे बाद उसका करना
3.1 Introduction. The transcendental are often called attributes or properties of being in the strict sense of the term. Property is some attribute which flows necessarily from an essence integrally constituted. As such, it is a positive entity adequately distinct from essence itself. Applying this to the notions of being, it is evident that there can be no such properties of being for a property adequately distinct from being must be non-being, which can't be the attribute of anything. Hence, we can describe them as certain inadequate and intrinsic supreme modes or attributes necessarily present in every being. Transcendental means the notions which applies to each and every being. The transcendentals are not confined to any particular category or classifications of being, as they transcend or go beyond all particular beings. 3.3 Being as one. One is that which is undivided in itself and divided from all others. Undivided in itself means that there is no need of comparing a thing with another in order to speak of its oneness. A thing would be one even if no other being were in existence or possible. For instance, God existed from eternity as the only one without the coexistence of any creature. Because a thing is undivided in itself, it follows that it is divided from all others. Since a thing, according to the principle of identity, is what it is, it must primarily be undivided in itself. Then, since the thing, according to the principle of contradictions, can't simultaneously be both itself and not itself, it must also be divided from every other. Hence, a part of a thing can truly be one as it is not actually divided from other part. A part is united with the other part of parts to form the unity of the whole. The whole is one, not the part. One signifies interior indivisions and distinctions from other beings. The more easily divisible a being is, the less consistency it has in itself. The tendency to divisibility is an ontological weakness. It is a tendency to be no longer itself, to be alienated. In fact, every being tends to conserve its own unity as it tends to conserve its own being. Kinds of one: perfectly one and imperfectly one. Perfectly one is one of simplicity without any inner real distinction. A thing is simple when it is not a compound. A compound is a unity made up of a number of parts. In other words, a compound is one and undivided in such a manner that it can be resolved into a number of components called its parts. Hence, a compound is actually undivided or unity but divisible. On the other hand, what is simple is neither divided nor divisible. Simplicity is defined as the absence of compositions in the reality of a being. This definition is negative or in form but positive in content. The reason for this negative form of the definitions lies in the fact that what human perceives in this world is affected by compositions in some way. Human arrives at the notions of simplicity by denying composition since it is some reality which is devoid of compositions. The definitions is positive in content. The denial of compositions in a being implies the affirmations of simplicity in that being since a simple being is undivided in itself and indivisible. There are two kinds of simplicity, absolute and relative. Absolute simplicity excludes all parts of whatever nature, be they real or conceptual. An absolutely simple being is not only actually undivided but also potentially indivisible since it is devoid of all parts. A compound being is actually undivided because it is a unity but potentially divisible since it consists of parts which make it to be a compound and into which it can be divided. Relative simplicity excludes parts of one kind but has parts of another kind. The relatively simple being is indivisible in one respect but divisible in another. For instance, human has a composite nature consisting of body, matter and soul form. Human body is a compound made up of different parts: heart, trunk, arms, legs, etc. Whereas human soul is simple because it does not consist of substantially different parts. Thus, human possesses relative simplicity in the simple substance of one spiritual soul, but in many other respects, in is a composite being. In no case can human be absolute simple, for one God, only God is absolutely simple. Imperfectly, one is one of compositions with a real distinctions of the principle of a being. Example, all corporeal beings. A being of this kind has parts within itself, but these parts are so united that they form a unit, a whole and a totality. For instance, a human body is composed of head, trunk and extremities, and each of them consists of various minor parts. These parts are not separated from each other as they form an organism, and an organism is a whole unity. Convertibility of being and one. Being and one are convertible. Being is one in so far as it is every being is one or a unity, and everything that is one or a unity is a being. First, every being is one of or a unity. Every being is either simple, compound in its nature. A being is simple when it does not consist of parts. It is compound when it consists of parts. Whatever is simple is actually and potentially undivided, for it has no parts into which it can be divided. Consequently, a simple being in undivided in itself and thus a unity or one. In the same way, a compound is a compound only being is undivided in itself and therefore a unity or one, whether simple or compound. The being of everything is characterized by indivision. In other words, every being is a unity or one. Secondly, every unity or one is a being. To be a unit or one means to have the unity of simplicity of the unity of compositions. That presupposes that something has his unity of simplicity or unity of composition. Unity of simplicity necessarily implies the concept of a reality consisting of no parts if the simple
क्लाइंट लोग को क्या चाहिए, सुंदर भी दिखनी चाहिए, काम भी बराबर होना चाहिए।
What is truth? This question is of central importance in the whole of philosophy. Through different philosophers understood it differently, it was first explicitly considered in the didactic didactic poem of Parmenides, in which the goddess teaches the way of truth that is distinguished from Mary. Different philosophers understood it differently. It was first explicitly considered in the didactic poem of Parmenides, in which the goddess teaches the way of truth that is distinguished from Mary opinion doxa, which is fallible. Plato too contrasts opinion with truth. The myth of the cave describes the accessibility of the human mind to truth. Aristotle further reflected on truth and identified it as judgment. St. Augustine emphasized the necessary nature of truth, which human reason discovers by the illuminations from God, who is the absolute, eternal, and changeless truth. For St. Thomas, truth is the education of the intellect to the thing, adequatio intellectus iteria. Descartes held God to be the guarantee of truth. Kant regarded truth as the agreement with the laws of the intellect. For Hegel, it is the absolute idea. Heidegger understands it to be the discourse or revelations of being, and the logical positivists it is nothing but verifiability. This concept from the history of philosophy must have contributed to the development of the most known theories of truth, such as the correspondence theory, coherence theory, performative theory, pragmatic theory, and semantic theory. Truth is correspondence insofar as it is a correspondence between the mind and the object. It is coherence insofar as the truth of propositions is in some way dependent on another. It is performative insofar as it endorses of signifies and relates the meta language to the object language, which in turn is related to the concrete object. Hence, truth is correspondence between the mind and the object that implies mutual dependence on and confirmations of propositions which are useful and meaningful. Besides being conformity or correspondence, truth also implies an original identity of being and knowing, for being is what is known, true knowing is true by its relations of being. Hence, truth is relations of knowing of being. What is this relation? This relation is a relation of identity or conformity in identity. Knowing is being when there is such an identity of being, and knowing truth consists in the absence of the difference between knowing and the known being. Conformity or correspondence is the conformity or correspondence of the subject's affirmations and negations to what is and what is not. While it is the same as the traditional distinctions of truth, truth is a conformity or correspondence between the mind and the object. Kinds of truth. Logical truth is the conformity of correspondence of the intellect to the thing. Here the thing is prior and the idea posterior. This relationship constitutes as the true knowledge of a thing. It is clear that every being has its own peculiar entity and reality independent of the intellect, which thinks of it. Things are what they are even through no mind forms an idea of them. When a mind does form an idea of a thing in order to have some knowledge of it, thing knowledge will either correspond ideally with the reality or will not. If it corresponds, it is true, otherwise it is false. The mind has knowledge of a thing when it forms ideas of its reality and unities. They mean a judgment which can be either affirmative or negative. It is opposed to falsity in judgment. Moral truth is the due conformity or correspondence or expressions and judgment in speech, writing, etc. When we make a judgment in our mind regarding a certain fact and then make a statement in speech which express the judgment in words, we have moral truth because our speech agrees with our thought. But when our speech disagrees with our judgment, then there is moral falsity, falsehood, a lie. This when a person is called upon to say the truth, the person should state according to one understanding of the matter what one judges to be the fact. One may be mistaken as to the real nature of this fact, but so long as one's verbal statement agrees with one's mental judgment, one says the truth even though the statement does not agree with objective reality. On the other hand, if one of verbal statement is the opposite of one judgment, one will be telling a lie even through the
lecture cancel
falsehood happens to correspond to object reality. Moral truth may be considered as a form of ontological truth viewed from the standpoint of an agreement between intellect and thing. The mind knowledge is the standard in ontological truth with the conformity of the thing to it in order to be true in moral truth too. The mind knowledge is the standard to which the verbal statement must conform to be true. Ontological truth is the conformity or conformability of things to the intellect. There is always conformity of things is some kind of intellect, at least to the divine intellect, insofar as God knows whatever is. In this sense, everything is true and nothing is false. False. Everything is true insofar as it is. There are two kinds of ontological truth. Exemplary ontological truth and identical ontological truth. Exemplary ontological truth is that in which the intellect processes in an idea of the being which is taken as the norm, the standard pattern of being possesses an idea of the being which is taken as the norm, the standard or the pattern of being a being must being must agree with this idea insofar as the object agrees with the type idea which the intellect has of this object. It is ontologically true. Ontological truth thus resides in object as they must conform to the intellect and its idea of the object. For example, an artist desires to paint a picture of the Madonna he has not seen here.
हाँ वो बन जाएगा ना। ये नारियल का तेल क्यों दे रहा है? नहीं है ना? अंदर जाएगा तो सर्दी अभी आया पानी अभी में थोड़ा सा गरम किया ना पानी।
But he has within his imaginations an image a tie which the हाँ
घर कहाँ से देखी वही धूल के तब भारी हम देखे ମୁଁ ହିଁ ପୋଛିକି ଆଣି ଯୋଉ ଦୁଆର ମୁହଁ ପାଖରୁ ଜଣେ ଖରିକିବା ନ ପୋଛା ହେଲେ ବି କ୍ଲିୟର କରିବ। ଆଉ ତମେ ମାନେ ଖାଇକି ଆମକୁ କଣ ସେକିବାକୁ ରହିଛ? ସାମାନ୍ୟ ଟିକେ ଘର କରିକି ବନେଇ ଠିକ ଠାକ।
intends to reproduce on the canvas. He paints the image if the picture agrees with the images previously present in his mind. It would be ontologically true because it is in conformity with the image as conceived before the painting was made. Identical ontological truth is the original identity of being, and knowing of being and truth being is the fundamental unity, since both the object and the subject are being. Hence being is an identification of being, and knowing that is this being is self knowledge, and knowledge is the self presence of being. Consequently being and truth are also convertible. Truth as an attribute of being is not nothing but something. Something is being and being is something, hence being is truth and truth is being. Ultimate criterion of truth. Criterion of truth is the rule of taste by which we distinguish which judgments for the false ones. The final criterion beyond which there is no appeal is the ultimate criterion, which is the internal, immediate, and objective evidence or self-evidence. Objective evidence is the characteristic of reality whereby something becomes objectively manifest to the preserving faculty. Object evidence makes reality cognitively clear and intelligibly apparent to be intellect, like the luminosity of a seeing body of one's eyes. It is the clear self-revelations of reality to the intellect, which is the capable for forming a correct judgment by interpreting the reality as it exists in its objective being. Objective evidence is internal when the ground for our judgment is clearly perceived to lie in the reality affirmed by the judgments such as, for example, would be judgment: it is raining this afternoon, 2 plus 2 4. A circle is directly present to the intellect or to the senses. In other words, the ultimate criterion of truth is the self-evidence, eternal, immediate, objective evidence of reality as it manifests itself to the intellect and the recognized by the intellect as such. Ultimate foundation of truth. The ultimate foundation of truth, logical and ontological, consists in the essential conformity of all beings of the divine mind. For a logical truth depends on the positive elements of a being present in a thing, as it is the conformity of the intellect to the thing. Its foundation it is the being of thing. Non ontological truth, since it is the conformity of the thing to the intellect, has its ultimate foundations in that intellect, which is the ultimate foundations of the interesting reality of things. Such an intellect is the divine intellect, according to whose type ideas all things have been created. Hence the ultimate foundations of all truth is the divine mind. Problem of falsity. Falsity is the disconformity between thing and intellect. As there are three kinds of truth, so there are also three kinds of falsity: moral, logical, and ontological. Moral falsity is the disconformity of speech with thought of judgment. Logical falsity or error is the disconformity of the intellect to the thing. It is evident in all the mistakes, confused options, frequent connections. Falsity. There is no absolute ontological falsity, since every being is ontological true. There can't be absolute ontological falsity. In order to be ontological false in an absolute sense, it would be necessary that a being discharges with every possible intellect. If it agreed with a single intellect, it would no longer be ontologically false but ontologically true. No, now every being must, hence every being is ontological true and regard to the ideas of God. However, there is a relative ontological falsity in relation to the human mind, for we do not always succeed in making the products of our skill and art agree with the plan or type we have in our mind. Hence we can say that there is no ontological falsity in an absolute sense, but only in a relative sense with reference to human in a limited manner. 3.4. Being as good. As being is one as true, it is also good. Good is objective of desire. Hence Aristotle gives this Definitions: good is what all desire. When the good is attained, it is experienced as pleasant, enjoyable, and satisfying. But man experiences aversions, no less the desire and pain, or no less than pleasure. Hence, good is always also coupled when its opposite evil. A being is good inasmuch it is appetible or desirable. Goodness the consists in the appetibility of desirability of a being. Desirability presupposes something in a being which is good, and one on account of which it is actually desired or desirable. What a being desires or seeks as good in another depends also in the sort of the individual the being is. For example, a management seeks iron, a plant seeks sunlight, a lion seeks food, a man seeks knowledge, etc. Hence good consists in this, that something is suitable to a being. Now all beings have a nature or essence as members of a class and individuals, and each such nature has a very real and definite presuppose or end within itself, which it tends to bring to feel completion and perfection. So being is perfect when it has everything that it is supposed to have according to the exegesis of its nature. That is, when it has attained its full actualizations, having as much reality as its nature demands. For example, man has the natural purpose of actualizing himself within itself, and all beings will be good for it insofar as they sun it and they suit its nature. Hence, we can define good as the suitability of a being for that which has or seeks it. Kinds of goodness. Physical goodness is that which satisfies the demand of the nature of a being. Each being has its own specific and individual nature, and as such, it has a very definite and purpose. Of, for example, a human person is supposed to have a head, a trunk, two arms, two legs, two eyes, two ears, etc. They are required if a person is to be considered physically good. Moral goodness is that which satisfies the demands of the moral law. In actions may be ontologically and physically good, very good, but morally evil. For instance, a soldier defends one's country in a just wherein an attack by the enemy. The one kills an enemy soldier with one's rifle. On another occasion, seen enemy soldiers comes towards the one carrying a flag of truce. The soldier kills the enemy soldiers too with the refill. If in both cases human beings are killed, the action is ontologically good insofar as it has something. The action is also physically good insofar as it is physically successful, but the morality of the action is different in each actions. In the first, it is morally good as it is a justifiable homicide in defense of one's country. In the second, it is morally bad as it is a murder, for the moral law requires moral respect for the enemy with a flag of true ontological goodness is that which is good in its very being itself. Every being insofar as it is a good, every being is good insofar as it possesses a certain amount of reality, for its reality is suitable for the tendency of its own nature to be what it is to perfect itself, and to retain its perfection. As beings are good in themselves by possessing their own being, they are capable of being desired and striven for so as to perfect the nature of some other being. Ontological goodness is also called transcendental or metaphysical goodness, as it is also convertible with bring the opposite of good is evil. Problem of evil. The problem of evil has always baffled the thinkers of every age, and it continues to be one of the most puzzling ones. Once David Hume raised the old apparition questions: why is there any misery at all in the world? Not by chance, surely from some cause then is it from the intentions of the deity? 40 is perfectly benevolent. Is it contrary to the intentions? But he is almighty. Why thus eternal punishment for the temporary offenses of so frail a creator as man? Can anyone approve of Alexander's race, who intended to exterminate a whole nations because they had seized they ha his favorite horse, Bucephalus. God is absolute God. Hence, it is impossible for him to be the author of evil. He can't be evil, and no shadow of evil falls on him. How can anything be or happen which is opposed to God and His goodness? Or how can a just, omnipotent, and an infinitely good God create evil or permit evil? Some thinkers have abandoned the omnipotence of God in favor of His goodness. J. S. Mill, William James, J. M. E. McTaggart, and E. S. Brinkman. Others take as mere appearance. F. H. Bradley B. Bosanquet, absolutist, and evidence in India. For some others, evil is partially good insofar as it is instrumental to some higher good. G.W. Leibniz, R.T. Tyson of some others hold that natural and moral evils are inevitable in a morally directed world. F.R. Tennant and Mark Pontifex. Kinds of evil. There are two main kinds of evil: physical and moral. Physical evil is the privations of a perfection pertaining to the physical order is the privation of a physical good. Physical evil is an established fact in the world. Many beings lack some reality which they are out to have. Sickness and injuries deprive living beings of that physical integrity which they require. Beings are Kinds of evil. There are two main kinds of evil, physical and moral. Physical evil is a privation of a perfection parenting to the physical order. It is the privations of a physical good. Physical evil as an established fact in the world. Many beings lack some reality which they out to have sickness and injuries, depressive thing living being of the physical integrity which the required beings are physically evil only suffer as some entity is missing in them. Whatever entity that possesses is an itself good. For instance, a cancerous lung is a physical evil only because that portions of the body is infected, but the remaining parts of the good, the rest of the body is not a physical evil. This privations is not an entity in itself but something relative to an individual's needs. Moral evil is the privation of a perfection pertaining to moral order. It is also evident that moral evil is present among humans. Sign is an undeniable fact. Crime is an everyday occurrence. However, it be false to consider moral evil as a positively existing entity. In fact, the sinful action as an action is ontologically good.